My God, who let you in here? The elevator doors closed. A black man in a navy suit stood inside, briefcase at his hip. Preston Caldwell grabbed his subordinate's arm, laughing. Laughter echoed. Smell that cheap clothes and a loser. The man didn't move. Hey, monkey in the cheap suit. This floor isn't for you. I have a meeting. Floor 68. Preston stepped forward, flicked the man's tie. A meeting. He leaned down. Cleaning shift, right? He and his subordinate burst out laughing. The man didn't blink. Calm as stone. 10 minutes, sir. Preston grabbed his shoulder hard. Don't argue with me. You're filth. Get out before I call security. But when the door opened, every executive in the hallway said 2 words. 2 words that made Preston Caldwell's face turn pale. That morning, the kitchen smelled like butter and warm maple syrup. A cast-iron skillet popped and sizzled on the stove. Elias Grant stood in a small Brooklyn brownstone, flipping pancakes with one hand and holding a sippy cup of orange juice in the other. His daughter Sophie sat at the table, still in her pajamas, kicking her feet against the chair legs. Daddy, you're burning it. I'm not burning it. That's called golden brown. It's black, Daddy. He looked down. She was right. He scraped it off the pan and slid her a fresh one. The kitchen was small, not cramped, just honest. A wooden table with 4 mismatched chairs, a well-worn Bible next to the coffee maker. On the wall, 3 framed photos told a story no one in that building today would expect. The first, a scholarship acceptance letter from Howard University, yellowed at the edges. The second, a younger Elias shaking hands on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, his first deal. The third, a family portrait. Eleanor in a white dress, Sophie on his lap, everyone laughing. No mansion, no sports car in the driveway. The man who controlled a massive portfolio lived in a house that still had a squeaky screen door. His wife Eleanor came down the stairs. Pediatric surgeon already in scrubs. She kissed Sophie on the forehead, then Elias on the cheek. Go easy on them today, Chairman. He smiled. I always do. She gave him a look. I mean it. No scaring the executives on day 1. He poured her coffee. Can't promise that. Sophie looked up. What's a chairman? Elias crouched down. It means Daddy has a big meeting today. Are you the boss? He grinned. Something like that, baby. He grabbed his briefcase, the same worn leather one his father carried to work for decades, and walked out the front door. No driver, no town car. He walked several blocks to the subway and rode the train into Manhattan like he did every morning. Now, let's talk about where he was headed. Pinnacle Holdings International, a towering glass building in Midtown Manhattan. The kind of building where the lobby alone cost more than most people's houses. White marble floors, a grand waterfall behind the reception desk. Security guards and tailored suits standing like statues at every entrance. This was old money, generational money, the kind of place where your last name meant more than your resume. And at the very top of that tower sat Preston Caldwell, CEO for years running, old money, Connecticut family, legacy connections. His grandfather helped build this company, and Preston never let anyone forget it. He arrived that morning in a black chauffeured Escalade, charcoal designer suit, monogrammed cufflinks, shoes that cost more than most people's rent. He didn't walk into the building. He marched, chin up, chest out, like he owned every square inch of air. A young black security guard held the door open. Preston walked through without looking at him. The guard said, "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell." Nothing. The guard said it again. "Good morning, sir." Preston stopped, turned around, looked the kid up and down. "Did I ask you to speak to me?" The guard froze. "You hold the door. That's your job. You don't talk to me. You don't look at me. You stand there and be invisible. Can you do that?" The guard's jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to the floor. "Yes, sir." Preston straightened his cuffs and walked away. No one said a word. The lobby full of people, receptionists, visitors, junior employees. Every single one of them looked away, pretended they didn't hear it. That was the culture, Preston's culture, and it had been rotting this building from the inside for a long time. But today was different. Today, board members were arriving for the quarterly meeting, and buried inside the agenda on the very last page, under new business, was a single line that nobody on the executive floor had seen yet. Appointment of new chairman of the board, effective immediately. The man they'd chosen had already entered the building. He was standing in the elevator in a navy suit holding a worn leather briefcase. And Preston Caldwell had just called him a monkey. The elevator hummed as it climbed. Elias stood near the back, hands at his sides, breathing steady. The fluorescent light above flickered once, casting a pale glow across the brushed steel walls. The air smelled faintly of cologne and polished metal. The doors opened on a lower floor. Preston Caldwell walked in. Behind him, Tyler Vaughn, the chief financial officer, tall, blonde, quiet eyes, and a junior associate whose name nobody ever remembered. They were mid-conversation, laughing about a weekend golf trip. Preston noticed Elias immediately. His laughter stopped. His eyes traveled from Elias's shoes up to his collar like he was inspecting something that didn't pass health code. He didn't lower his voice. Didn't even try. "Still here?" Preston's voice dripped with disbelief. "I thought I told you to leave." "What? You don't understand English either?" Elias said nothing. He pressed the button for the top floor. It was already lit. Preston watched him press it, then turned to Tyler Vaughn with a smirk so wide it wrinkled his forehead. "Tyler, look at this. Our little janitor friend thinks he's riding to the top floor." Vaughn gave a weak, uncomfortable half smile. He adjusted his tie and looked at the floor numbers climbing. "You know what kills me?" Preston said loud enough for the whole elevator to hear. "These people walk in off the street, put on a suit from a thrift shop, and actually believe they belong somewhere. It's like watching a dog walk into a restaurant. Doesn't matter how it got in, it still doesn't belong." The junior associate let out a nervous laugh. He glanced at the floor, too uncomfortable to look anywhere else. Elias's jaw tightened. Just barely, a fraction of a second. Then it relaxed again. "I'm Elias Grant," he said quietly. "I have a meeting on the top floor." Preston stared at him, blinked twice. Then he burst out laughing, a sharp, loud bark that filled the entire elevator. "A meeting?" He slapped Tyler's arm. "Did you hear that, Tyler? The janitor has a meeting." He turned back to Elias, stepped closer. "With who? The cleaning supervisor? The guy who refills the soap dispensers?" Elias didn't answer. His breathing didn't change. His eyes stayed locked on the brushed steel doors. Tyler Vaughn shifted his weight. His half-smile was gone now. He opened his mouth to speak. "Preston, maybe we should..." "Should what?" Preston snapped without turning around. "You going to tell me this man has a meeting in our boardroom?" He scanned Elias again, slowly, top to bottom. "In that suit with those shoes. My gardener dresses better than this. Hell, my dog groomer dresses better than this." The elevator kept climbing. The numbers ticked by in cold silence. Elias didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the doors. His hands stayed still. The only movement was the slow rise and fall of his chest. Preston moved closer. Close enough that Elias could smell the espresso on his breath. Close enough to feel the heat coming off his skin. "Let me explain something to you, friend." His voice dropped, not softer, sharper, like a blade being drawn slowly. I've been running this company for years. I know every face on every floor of this building. And yours? He jabbed a finger toward Elias's chest, stopping an inch from his tie. Yours doesn't belong anywhere above the parking garage. You know what I think? Preston tilted his head. I think you followed someone through the lobby, snuck past the front desk, figured you could ride up here and… what? Sit in a chair, drink our coffee, pretend you're somebody? He chuckled, but it was darker now, colder. That's what people like you do. You sneak into places hoping no one notices. But I notice. I always notice. Elias turned his head, looked Preston directly in the eyes. No anger, no fear, no pleading. Just a stillness so deep it could swallow the room. You're entitled to your opinion, Mr. Caldwell. Something shifted in Preston's expression. Not the words, the tone. That absolute, unshakable calm. It unnerved him the way silence unnerves a man who's used to everyone flinching. Don't say my name like you know me, Preston said. I know exactly who you are, Elias replied. The doors began to slide open. The wide marble hallway of the executive floor stretched out before them, polished, gleaming, filled with soft morning light pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. Glass-walled offices lined both sides. The scent of fresh flowers drifted from the reception desk. Elias stepped forward. Preston's arm shot out. He slammed the door close button. The doors stuttered, then froze halfway open. You're not stepping onto my floor. Elias looked at the arm blocking him, then at Preston. Your floor? My floor? My building? My company? Preston's face was flushed red. A vein pulsed at his temple. And you are going back down to the lobby, out the front door and back to whatever brought you here. Am I making myself clear? Tyler Vaughn looked physically ill. His phone was already in his hand, fingers hovering over the screen. Preston, seriously, maybe we should just… Shut your mouth, Tyler. Elias waited 3 full seconds. The kind of silence that makes everyone hold their breath. Then he reached across, gently lifted Preston's hand off the button, and stepped through the doors. He walked onto the executive floor. Preston stood frozen in the elevator, his mouth slightly open. Then his face twisted with fury. He straightened his cuffs, clenched his jaw, and followed. Hey, hey! His voice cracked off the marble walls like a gunshot. Heads turned everywhere. Assistants at their desks looked up. Junior associates carrying files froze mid-step. A male clerk stopped his cart. The hallway went dead silent. Preston caught up to Elias in 4 hard strides, grabbed his elbow, yanked him backward, spun him around. Don't you walk away from me. Elias looked down at the hand gripping his arm, knuckles white, fingers digging into the fabric of his sleeve. Then he looked up at Preston. His voice was low, not threatening, not pleading, just clear, like a man who already knows how this ends. I'd recommend you let go of my arm, Mr. Caldwell. Or what? Preston squeezed harder. His voice rose. He wanted the audience now, wanted every pair of eyes in the hallway watching. What are you going to do? Call your probation officer? You're nobody. You walked into the wrong building in the wrong suit, pretending to be something you will never ever be. He released Elias's arm with a shove. Elias stumbled half a step backward, caught himself, straightened his jacket slowly, without a word. Preston turned to the receptionist. A young woman behind a curved glass desk, already pale, her fingers trembling near the phone. Call security, right now. She hesitated. Her voice barely came out. Mr. Caldwell, sir? He's on today's approved list. I don't care what list he's on. Preston's palm slammed the desk. The receptionist flinched. I am the CEO of this company. Call security and have this man removed. Service exit, not the lobby. I don't want our clients seeing this circus. She picked up the phone, her hands shaking. 2 security guards arrived quickly. Big men, dark suits, earpieces. One black, one white, both visibly uncomfortable. Preston pointed at Elias like he was pointing at a stray dog that had wandered inside. Get him out now. The black security guard looked at Elias, then at Preston, then at the receptionist, who gave the tiniest, most desperate shake of her head. Mr. Caldwell, the guard said carefully, our briefing this morning said all board-level guests have full clearance. I don't care about your briefing. Preston's voice was a bark now, raw and vicious. Spit flew from his lip. I'm giving you a direct order. Remove this man from my floor, or I'll find 2 guards who know how to follow instructions. The guards looked at each other. Then they looked at Elias. Elias gave them a single nod, almost imperceptible, as if to say, it's all right. Go ahead. They took positions on either side of him, not rough, not aggressive, but close. And they began walking him toward the service corridor, past the glass offices, past the conference rooms, past the rows of desks where junior analysts sat frozen watching. Every eye in the hallway was on them. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. A young black woman stood near the copy machine. An intern couldn't have been older than her early 20s. Her eyes were glassy. Her hands were trembling at her sides. She watched Elias walk past her, flanked by guards, head held high, and her lips pressed together so tight they turned white. Elias caught her eye, and he nodded once. Slow, steady, eyes on hers, as if to say, don't worry, this isn't over. The service corridor was cold. No marble here. No morning light, just gray concrete walls, buzzing fluorescent tubes, and the smell of industrial cleaning fluid. The part of the building no client ever saw. And this was where they were taking Elias Grant. The 2 security guards walked on either side of him. Their footsteps echoed off the bare floor. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them looked at him. The black guard kept his jaw clenched so tight a muscle twitched beneath his ear. The white guard stared straight ahead, his ears turning pink, his breathing shallow. They knew something was wrong. They could feel it. But they had families, mortgages, kids in school. And Preston Caldwell had a reputation for destroying anyone who disobeyed him. Elias walked between them, with his back straight and his chin level, his briefcase still in his hand, his shoes clicking steadily on the concrete. He didn't resist, didn't argue, didn't ask where they were taking him. He already knew. Behind them, the hallway of the executive floor was still frozen. Employees standing in complete silence. Some at their desks, some in doorways, some holding coffee cups they'd forgotten about. Every single one of them had watched a man get dragged off the executive floor for the crime of being black in a navy suit, and not one of them had opened their mouth. Preston stood in the center of the hallway like a man who just won a war. His chest was puffed out. His chin was high. He straightened his cuffs and looked around the room with a slow, satisfied grin. "Let that be a lesson," he said. "Not to anyone in particular. To everyone. This company has standards. This floor has standards, and if you don't meet them, if you don't look the part, dress the part, belong here, then you will be removed. Simple as that." He paused, let the silence do its work. Now, does anyone else have a problem? Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The young black intern by the copy machine was still standing there, tears running silently down her cheeks. She wiped them with the back of her hand and looked down at the floor. Preston noticed her. His eyes narrowed. He walked toward her slowly, like a predator that had spotted easy prey. "You," he pointed. "Why are you crying? You know him or something?" She shook her head quickly. Too quickly. Then what? You feel sorry for him? Preston let out a short laugh. Let me guess. You're one of those diversity hires, right? Probably got the same bus here. Probably wearing the same brand of cheap shoes. A few employees looked away. One woman at a nearby desk closed her laptop screen, unable to watch. Stop crying. This is $1 billion company, not a daycare center. Wipe your face and get back to work. Or do I need to call security for you too? She turned away, her shoulders trembling, her fingernails digging into her palms so hard they left marks. That was the moment the boardroom door opened. Vivian Brooks stepped out. Pinnacle's general counsel, a black woman in her late 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, charcoal blazer, a leather portfolio that looked like it had seen countless courtrooms. She took 2 steps into the hallway, stopped, looked at the frozen employees, the crying intern, the service corridor door still swinging shut. Then she looked at Preston Caldwell. "What did you do?" Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the silence like a scalpel. Preston rolled his eyes. "Relax, Vivian. I handled the security issue. Some guy off the street wandered up here pretending he had a meeting." "Some guy," Vivian repeated. "Flat? Dangerous?" "Yeah, some guy. Black guy, bad suit, didn't have credentials, didn't have clearance. I had security escort him out. End of story." Vivian stared at him for a long time, long enough that Preston shifted his weight. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Service corridor." On his way out, where he belongs, Vivian closed her eyes just for a second. When she opened them, something had changed. The patience was gone. "Bring him back right now." Preston laughed. "Excuse me. I said bring him back immediately. Call off your guards and bring that man back to this floor." Preston stepped toward her, lowering his voice like he was talking to a child. "I'm the CEO of this company. I decide who walks on this floor and who doesn't. Stay in your lane." Vivian didn't move, didn't blink. "My lane, Preston, is making sure this company doesn't get sued into the ground. And right now, you're not just crossing a line, you're lighting it on fire and dancing on the ashes." "Sued?" Preston scoffed. "By who?" "That guy. He's probably halfway to the bus stop by now. That man's name is Elias Grant. I don't care what his name is." "You should." Vivian's voice dropped even lower. "You really, really should." Preston stared at her. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear, not yet, but the first faint shadow of doubt. The kind of doubt that a man like Preston buries immediately, because acknowledging it would mean admitting he might be wrong. And Preston Caldwell was never wrong. He turned to the hallway, raised his voice again, performative, grand. "You know what the problem is today? Everyone's so worried about being politically correct that they've forgotten how to run a business. A man walks in here with no badge, no credentials, no invitation, and I'm the bad guy for showing him the door." He spread his arms wide. "This is my building, my rules, and if that bothers anyone in this hallway, there's a service exit for you too." He looked directly at Vivian when he said it. She didn't flinch. She held his gaze with the stillness of a woman who had spent decades watching men like Preston crumble on the witness stand. She didn't say another word. She turned on her heel, walked back through the boardroom door, and pulled out her phone. The hallway stayed frozen. People standing like statues. Some of them wanted to speak up. Some of them had watched Elias get dragged through that service door and felt something break inside their chest. But none of them moved because in this building, silence wasn't just expected. It was survival. Preston fed on it. He stood in the center of that silence like a king surveying a conquered city, daring anyone to challenge him. No one did. Not a single soul. Inside the boardroom, the air was different. Chairs around a long mahogany table, crystal water glasses, leather folders at each seat, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Morning sun casting golden rectangles across the carpet. Board members were filing in. Quiet conversations, handshakes, the rustle of papers. Harold Kensington sat at the head of the table, the co-founder of Pinnacle Holdings, the man who built this company from humble beginnings. He looked at the empty chair to his right, the chairman's chair. "Where's Grant?" he said. Lydia Ramirez, head of human resources, looked up from her phone. Her face had gone pale. "Harold," she held up her screen. "Vivian just texted me." Kensington took the phone, read the message, read it again. His lips moved as he processed each word. His face changed. Not anger, not at first. Something deeper, something slower. The kind of fury that doesn't explode. It calcifies. It turns to stone. His knuckles whitened against the table. He set the phone down too gently, the way a man handles something when he's trying not to break everything else. He stood up, buttoned his jacket. Every board member in the room stopped talking. "What's going on?" one of them asked. Kensington didn't answer. He walked toward the boardroom door. His footsteps were measured, deliberate. The kind of walk that tells you a man has made a decision and nothing is going to change it. Lydia followed, then another board member, then another. One by one, all of them stood up, pushed back their chairs, followed Harold Kensington toward the door. Out in the hallway, Preston Caldwell was still talking, still performing. He'd loosened his tie now. He was pacing, lecturing employees about loyalty, standards, knowing your place. He didn't hear the boardroom door open behind him. He didn't see Harold Kensington step into the hallway. He didn't notice the executives forming a line behind his back. He was mid-sentence, pointing at the service corridor where Elias had been taken, when he saw the receptionist's face change. Her eyes went wide, not with fear, not with confusion, with something else entirely. Relief. Preston stopped talking. The hallway had shifted. The energy had changed. He could feel it crawling on the back of his neck like a cold wind. He turned around slowly, and there they were, board members standing shoulder to shoulder, every single one of them looking past Preston down the service corridor to where two security guards were walking a man in a navy suit back toward the light. Vivian Brooks had made the call. Elias Grant was coming back, and Preston Caldwell, for the first time in his tenure, had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. Elias Grant walked out of the service corridor. His suit was the same. His briefcase was the same. His posture was the same. Nothing about him had changed. Not a wrinkle, not a crease, not a hair out of place. But everything around him had. The two security guards stopped at the corridor entrance. They didn't follow him into the hallway. They stepped aside almost instinctively, the way people step aside when they realized they've been standing in the path of something much bigger than themselves. Elias walked forward, slow, steady. His shoes clicked against the marble. Each step echoed clearly through a hallway so silent you could hear the air conditioning hum. Employees lined the walls, frozen, watching. And at the end of the hallway, board members standing in a line waiting for him. Harold Kensington was the first to move. He stepped forward, extended his hand, and looked Elias directly in the eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Chairman." His voice carried down the hallway like a bell. The second board member stepped forward, a woman in a navy blazer, steel gray hair. She shook Elias's hand firmly. "Mr. Chairman, welcome." Then the third. "It's an honor, Mr. Chairman." Then the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, one by one. "Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman," handshakes, voices, each one landing like a hammer blow on the silence of that hallway. Every employee heard it, every assistant, every analyst, every intern. The receptionist behind the glass desk, the mail clerk frozen beside his cart, the two security guards still standing at the mouth of the service corridor, and Preston Caldwell. Preston Caldwell heard every single word. He stood nearby. His arms had fallen to his sides. His mouth was open, not speaking, not breathing, just open like a man who had just watched the floor disappear beneath his feet. His face, the same face that had sneered, laughed, pointed, grabbed, and lectured, was white. Completely, totally, utterly white. The blood had drained from it so fast that his lips looked gray. His skin looked like wax. His left hand was trembling. He tried to stop it by pressing it against his thigh. It didn't work. Sweat appeared at his hairline. A thin line of moisture crawled down his temple and dripped off his jaw. He tried to speak. His mouth moved. Nothing came out. Just a dry click in the back of his throat. Harold Kensington finished his handshake with Elias and turned around. He looked at Preston the way a father looks at a child who has just broken something irreplaceable. Not with anger, with disappointment so deep it didn't need words. But he used them anyway. Preston? Kensington's voice was measured, controlled, every syllable deliberate. I'd like you to meet Elias Grant. He was unanimously appointed chairman of the board of Pinnacle Holdings International. He paused. Let the silence do its work. He holds a controlling interest in this company. Kensington took one step closer to Preston. His voice dropped. You report to him. The hallway didn't gasp. It didn't murmur. It didn't react at all. It was beyond reaction. The air itself had changed. Every molecule in that corridor was vibrating with the weight of what had just been said. Preston's eyes darted left, right, looking for an exit, looking for someone who might step forward and tell him this was a misunderstanding, a prank, a test. Nobody moved. Tyler Vaughn, the CFO, who had stood in that elevator and said nothing, was leaning against the far wall. His face was the color of wet cement. He couldn't look at Elias. He couldn't look at Preston. He stared at the floor like it was the only safe place left. The young black intern by the copy machine had both hands pressed over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But these were different tears. Her eyes were wide, not with pain, with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Vindication. Elias stood in the center of the hallway, board members behind him, employees around him, two security guards who had just escorted him through a service exit, now standing at attention, unable to meet his gaze. He looked at Preston Caldwell, not with anger, not with triumph, not with the satisfied grin of a man who had been waiting for this moment. Just calm, the same calm he had carried in the elevator. The same calm he had carried through the insults, the shoving, the service corridor. The same calm he had carried his entire life. He adjusted his tie. The same tie Preston had flicked with his fingers, straightened the lapel of his jacket. The same jacket Preston had called a dollar store costume. Then he spoke quietly, just loud enough for Preston to hear. I believe you had some concerns about my clearance level, Mr. Caldwell. Preston opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing. For the first time in his tenure, Preston Caldwell had nothing to say. And the silence that followed was the loudest sound that building had ever heard. The silence lasted several seconds, long enough for every person in that hallway to feel the earth tilt beneath their feet. Then Preston broke. This is clearly a misunderstanding. I had no idea. He looked around for support, for a friendly face, for someone to tell him it was okay. Nobody moved. Elias, Mr. Grant, Preston's voice pitched higher. If I had known who you were, I would never have... Elias's voice wasn't loud, but it hit like a wall. There was no misunderstanding, Mr. Caldwell. He took one step forward. You saw a black man in a modest suit and decided he didn't belong. You called me names. You flicked my tie. You grabbed my arm. You had me escorted through a service exit like garbage. He paused. That wasn't confusion. That was a choice. Preston's mouth opened, closed. His eyes were wet now. Not with remorse, with panic. I treat everyone the same. You do. Elias nodded slowly. That's exactly the problem. He turned to Vivian Brooks standing near the boardroom with her portfolio already open. Vivian, every HR complaint filed against Mr. Caldwell. All of them. How far back did they go? Vivian didn't hesitate. She'd been waiting for this question for years. They go back years, Mr. Chairman. Numerous formal complaints involving racial discrimination. Some settled privately with non-disclosure agreements. She held up a folder, thick, dog-eared, heavy with paper. It's all here. Preston stared at the folder like it was a loaded weapon pointed at his chest. Those were resolved. Those were handled. Those were buried. Vivian said there's a difference. Elias looked at the board members still standing behind him, then at the employees lining the hallway, then back at Preston. Effective immediately, Elias said, "You are suspended from all duties as CEO of Pinnacle Holdings International, pending a full internal investigation into your conduct. Your corporate accounts will be frozen, your building access will be revoked, your office will be sealed." He said it the way a surgeon delivers a diagnosis. No emotion, no satisfaction, just fact. Preston's knees buckled slightly. He caught himself on the edge of a desk. His fingers gripped the wood so hard, his knuckles turned yellow. "You can't! The board! I built this!" "You didn't build anything, Preston." Harold Kensington's voice came from behind Elias, quiet, final. "I built this company. You inherited a chair, and today you lost it." Elias turned to the two security guards, the same two men who had walked him through the service corridor minutes ago. They were standing at the edge of the hallway, shoulders stiff, eyes wide. "Gentlemen," Elias said, "please escort Mr. Caldwell from the building." He paused. "Service exit." The words landed like a verdict. Every person in the hallway understood the symmetry. The same corridor, the same door, the same walk of shame. But this time, it was Preston Caldwell making the walk. The guards stepped forward, one on each side. Preston looked at them, the same men he had barked orders at minutes ago, and something collapsed behind his eyes. The arrogance, the posture, the years of untouchable authority. It all crumbled in the time it took to exhale. He didn't resist. He walked between them with his head down, past the same desks, past the same glass offices, past the copy machine where the young black intern stood watching. She didn't look away this time. She didn't blink. She watched him every step of the way. The service corridor door closed behind him with a soft click. Within the hour, his corporate credit cards were deactivated. His nameplate was unscrewed from his office door. His parking spot was reassigned. Years of rain erased in minutes. The hallway slowly exhaled. People blinked, shifted their weight, looked at each other as if waking from a dream. Tyler Vaughn approached Elias near the boardroom entrance. His face was drawn, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Grant, I was in that elevator. I heard everything he said to you." He swallowed hard. "I should have said something. I'm sorry." Elias looked at him for a long moment. No anger, no judgment, just truth. "Yes, Mr. Vaughn. You should have." Vaughn nodded once, looked at the floor, then turned and walked away without another word. The investigation began, and Patricia brought in a respected employment law firm. Senior partners, a team of investigators, a forensic accountant. They set up in a conference room on the executive floor, the same floor where Preston had delivered his lecture about standards, and they started pulling files. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Years of Preston Caldwell running Pinnacle Holdings like a private kingdom where the color of your skin determined how far you could climb. The evidence wasn't hidden. It wasn't buried deep in some locked cabinet. It was sitting in plain sight in HR databases, in email chains, in performance reviews that had been quietly altered. Qualified black candidates passed over for promotions in favor of less experienced white colleagues. Internal transfer requests from employees of color denied without explanation. Diversity training programs defunded by Preston's direct order. Meeting minutes showing he had personally vetoed the hiring of non-white executives, calling them not the right cultural fit. Lydia Ramirez sat in front of the investigators. She brought her own records, emails she had saved, conversations she had documented, dates, names, exact quotes. "He told me to make the complaints disappear," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles were white. "He said if I couldn't keep the house clean, he'd find someone who could." Former employees had signed non-disclosure agreements after filing racial discrimination complaints. Preston had personally approved the settlements. Not because the complaints had merit, he told the board at the time, but because the optics of a trial would be bad for stock price. Then the story broke. A reporter at the New York Times received a tip. Nobody knew who sent it. The elevator footage was on every screen in America. The security camera had captured everything, every sneer, every insult. The moment Preston flicked Elias's tie, the moment he grabbed his arm, the moment he pointed at him like a stray dog and ordered the guards to remove him, and then the reversal. Board members, handshakes, the words, "Mr. Chairman," echoing down the hallway while Preston's face turned to chalk. The footage was short, no narration, no commentary, just raw, unedited truth. It spread rapidly. The hashtag started organically. Someone on social media posted a screenshot of Elias standing in his navy suit beside Preston's expensive designer suit and wrote, "The cheap suit just bought the whole building." The board convened in emergency session. The vote was unanimous. Preston Caldwell was terminated for cause. His severance package with golden parachute protections was voided entirely. The company's legal team cited a morality clause in his contract. Preston's attorneys threatened to sue. Pinnacle's attorneys sent them the elevator footage and asked if they'd like to play it in open court. They didn't. Regulators opened a preliminary inquiry. The question was simple. Had Preston's systematic discrimination materially affected company operations in ways that should have been disclosed to shareholders? The settlement payments alone raised red flags. The altered performance reviews raised more. The civil lawsuit moved forward. Former Pinnacle employees, all people of color, all forced out under Preston's tenure, filed a joint civil rights lawsuit against him personally, not against the company, against Preston Caldwell, the individual. Their attorney held a press conference on the courthouse steps. She stood in front of microphones and said, "This is not about one elevator ride. This is about years of institutional racism enforced by one man, protected by silence." The cases that had been buried were now front-page news. Preston issued a written apology through his attorney. It was brief. It used the word regret and the word sorry. It blamed a momentary lapse in judgment and expressed deep respect for all colleagues, regardless of background. It read like it had been drafted by a legal team. The internet tore it apart. His country club revoked his membership. The board of a children's charity he had chaired asked him to resign. His wife was photographed by paparazzi, leaving their Connecticut estate with packed suitcases and their children in the back seat of a luxury vehicle. She didn't once look at the cameras. Preston Caldwell, the man who had stood in that hallway and told employees that this was his building, his rules, was now sitting alone in a house that was about to be divided by divorce attorneys. Meanwhile, Elias Grant got to work. He didn't hold press conferences. He didn't do victory laps. He walked into the boardroom the morning after Preston's termination, sat down in the chairman's chair, and opened his briefcase. The first item on his agenda, a comprehensive equity audit across all divisions of Pinnacle Holdings International. Every hiring decision, every promotion, every termination from the past decade would be reviewed. An independent oversight committee would be established. Quarterly reports would be published publicly. The second item, a scholarship fund named after the public school where Elias Grant had learned to read, fully funded by Pinnacle, full ride scholarships per year for first-generation college students. The third item, a personnel decision. The young black intern who had stood by the copy machine that morning, the one who had cried, been mocked, been told to wipe her face and get back to work, was called into Elias's office that afternoon. Her name was Jasmine Reed. She had almost quit that morning, had almost walked out the service exit herself, and never come back. Elias offered her a promotion. Junior analyst, full salary, benefits starting immediately. She sat across from him, trying not to cry again. Her hands were shaking. "Why me?" she asked. Elias leaned back in his chair. The same worn leather briefcase sat on the desk beside him, because you were the only person in that hallway who wasn't afraid to feel something. She accepted on the spot. Later, the elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Same marble walls, same soft golden light, same quiet hum of a building that never sleeps. Elias Grant stepped inside. Navy suit, worn leather briefcase. No designer watch, no entourage, just a man heading to work. A young woman was already in the elevator, new badge clipped to her blazer, the plastic still shiny, the photo still stiff. She was clutching a notebook against her chest with both hands, staring at the floor numbers like they might bite her. First day. Elias pressed the top floor. It was already lit. He smiled. Nervous? She let out a breath she'd probably been holding since the lobby. Is it that obvious? Little bit? He extended his hand. Welcome to Pinnacle. I'm Elias. She shook it. Ava Sinclair. I'm starting in the analytics division. Good division. Good people. He nodded toward her notebook. You're going to do great. The doors opened. She stepped out first, glanced back with a small, grateful smile, and disappeared down the hallway. She had no idea she had just shaken hands with the chairman of the board. And that was exactly the point. Elias walked the same hallway where months ago Preston Caldwell had stood in the center and lectured employees about knowing their place. The carpet was the same. The glass offices were the same. The light was the same. But the wall was different. Where Preston's portrait had once hung, oil on canvas, arms crossed, chin raised, the pose of a man who believed he owned the air, there was now a framed document. Simple black frame, white paper, clean text. Pinnacle Holdings International. Statement of Values. The first line read, "Dignity is not earned. It is inherent." Elias had written it himself, alone in his office the night after Preston's termination. No committee, no consultant. Just a man sitting at a desk with a pen and a legal pad writing down what he believed, what he had always believed, what his father had taught him on a porch decades ago. Dignity is not earned. It is inherent. It hung on every floor of the building now, in every conference room, every break room, every elevator lobby. Jasmine Reed, the intern who had cried by the copy machine, was now a junior analyst on a strong performing team in the company. She had her own desk, her own nameplate, her own office. On her first day, she pinned a handwritten note to her corkboard. It read, "Feel something." And Preston Caldwell, Last anyone checked, his name appeared on a small consulting firm's website in New Jersey. No photo, no bio, just a name. Senior advisor. The firm had a small team. Its biggest client was a regional plumbing supply company. The man who once controlled a massive empire from a corner office overlooking Manhattan was now advising a plumbing company from a rented desk. No major corporation would touch him. His name had become a verb in HR departments across the country. Don't Caldwell yourself meant don't let your arrogance write a check your career can't cash. The internet never forgets, and neither does the executive floor. The story you just heard is fiction, but the feelings aren't. The humiliation, the assumptions, the silence from every person watching. Those things happen every single day in elevators, in lobbies, in boardrooms, to people judged by the fabric on their back instead of the character underneath it. What would you have done? I want to ask you one thing. Be honest. Have you ever watched someone get treated like they didn't belong and stayed silent? Have you ever been that person? What did you do? What do you wish you'd done? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, anything at all, share it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because every week we tell stories about people who refuse to be defined by someone else's ignorance. Because dignity doesn't come from your suit. It doesn't come from your title or your bank account. It comes from how you carry yourself when someone tries to strip it away. Elias Grant didn't need executives to validate who he was. He knew before he ever walked into that building. The only question is, do you? Dignity isn't something people give you. You either know your worth or you don't. And staying silent when someone's disrespected, that's a choice too. Be the one who speaks up. That's the real flex.